Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. Join us each week or when you can. We enjoy exploring wellness concepts and reminding you to make time for wellness. This is episode 151.
Welcome to a new week of the Let's Be Well Together podcast. It's Elise Seifert, and here I am with Sheila Webster.
Hi, Elise. It's been a while. Welcome back.
Yeah. Today we're going to be talking about social wellness and how we can navigate tricky times. And our main focus is going to be 7 places to stay silent at all costs. When you're in those tricky situations with social interactions, there are times where it benefits you to be silent.
Mm-hmm. And this is something I should definitely work on, I think.
Yeah. This is something I think I might do a lot of. I think I'm often silent about when I'm feeling upset or when I'm feeling hurt. Mm-hmm. So I think something I'm trying to do is speak up more, actually. Mm-hmm. So this is an interesting reflection on when you should stay silent at all costs. Mm-hmm. And then
instead of expressing your emotions.
Mm-hmm. So maybe we'll read off the 7 different places to stay silent. I'll start and we can alternate.
Sounds good.
Number 1 is be silent if you don't know the full story.
Number 2, be silent when you feel too emotional.
Number 3, be silent in the heat of anger.
Number 4, be silent if your words can offend a person.
Number 5, be silent if your words can destroy a friendship.
6, be silent if you can't talk without yelling.
And number 7, be silent if your silence can save bonds.
Interesting. And so which ones stick out for you, Elise?
I think the first one sticks out for me. So that's be silent if you don't know the full story. Mm-hmm. I know this often kind of comes up in teaching when you're getting to know different students and maybe you're trying to understand where their behaviors are coming from. Mm-hmm. It's easy for us to kind of judge their behavior and assume you know what's going on. And then when you really learn maybe where their behavior is coming from, it helps you to realize there's a lot more to it than you thought there was. Mm-hmm. And I know that this can happen for sure in social situations and relationships where you might not know the full story. Maybe there is some trauma, or maybe there is even just an experience that they had that makes them a little more sensitive to what's going on. And I think it's important to just recognize that there might be more than what you see.
Yeah, I think that's really judgment involved there. You know, you're talking to other people and you're talking about someone and you're just judging them from what you see, not realizing there's a heck of a lot more going on behind the stories. And that's for everyone. So yeah, I really agree with you, Elise. That's really a good one.
Yeah. And you also judge them based on your own personal experience. So how you would handle certain situations. And it's important for me to remember that they're a different person and they're going to handle it in a different way.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
Which of these stand out to you?
Well, there's a few. One is be silent when you can't talk without yelling. Mm-hmm. So for some reason, whenever I get upset or argue, I tend to get louder and louder, thinking that I'm proving my point by being louder. And that's not usually a great way to react. And then often the person you're arguing with or talking to doesn't know how to handle that. And then they'll get upset and it just causes a whole snowball effect. So that is probably a really good one for me. Be silent if you can't talk without yelling.
And it's hard though, because once you're kind of in that state where you are yelling, it's hard to come down.
Yeah, exactly.
So trying to think about strategies for how can you come down from that state when you're in it and be silent. Mm-hmm. When sometimes I know if I'm getting angry, I know that it's really hard for me to just stop. I just kind of want to keep going, get it out, just get it all out. But I think trying to think of strategies to be silent. So maybe just taking a step back, removing yourself from the situation if you're able, maybe taking some deep breaths, counting to 10, all of those basic strategies that really do work are important to remember in those kind of situations.
Yeah. And number 2 is be silent in the heat of anger, which is kind of the same thing because when you're getting angry, you start to yell, but being silent in the heat of anger, that is a really hard one.
So hard.
Right. And often you're so angry, you're not even making sense, or the other problem that I have is sometimes if I'm talking in the heat of anger, I'm displaying anger to someone else because of something that happened to me. You know what I mean? Like I'm not dealing with my anger, I'm displacing it. And so you take it out on someone else, which really sucks.
That's a good point. It's often at the wrong person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So trying to be silent in the heat of anger, just like, okay, stop. You know, you don't need to speak right now. Just be quiet, take everything in, calm down. Like you said, count to 10, do all those things. And then you'll realize, okay, I can talk now. I can have a regular conversation.
Yeah. And I know when I do speak out in those anger moments, I always regret what I say.
Yeah.
Whereas there are times where I'm really angry and I'm just like, okay, just let it go, walk away. And then later I realize I'm really glad I actually didn't say what I wanted to say in that moment.
Yes.
Because it wouldn't have helped. It just would have hurt. So I know I always regret the times I speak out in anger, and I never regret the times that I walk away.
No.
So I think that's an important reflection.
Yeah. Generally, I think silence is just a good way to approach things. Let's stop and think before you speak. And it's something that a lot of people don't do. A lot of people just feel like they have to get their opinions out. They have to say, but it's not always important. It's sometimes just more important just to listen. Be silent and just listen. So I think these are great reminders for us.
Great reminders. I know one I'm working on right now is being silent when you feel too emotional.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right now we're doing the newborn life.
Yes.
So I'm getting very limited sleep, and it really affects my emotions, like my hormones.
Yeah.
I think not having a good chunk of sleep, I never get into that REM sleep, and maybe I'll get 5 hours if I'm lucky, but typically I'm getting 3 or 4 hour stretches over the night. And I think it makes me a lot more emotional, especially when it's almost nighttime. And I know, okay, I'm not going to get sleep. This is making me worried.
I'm exhausted and I'm not going to get sleep.
Yeah. And I say things that I do not want to say because I'm in an emotional state. So I think that's something I need to work on. And it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah, that's very hard. Generally, I find the newborn stage of not getting sleep, that's really hard because you get little spouts of sleep, but you don't get, like you said, that REM sleep, that good night's sleep. So you really miss it and you're kind of going on auto drive. And then, like you said, your emotions get the better of you. So what do you think of these ones? Be silent if your words can offend a person. And then the other one, be silent if your silence can save bonds. I feel like they're kind of like opposite, but the
similar.
Same. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's hard to know sometimes what could offend a person, what couldn't.
Oh, it's very hard.
It's hard. I mean, I know I'm always trying to be mindful of making sure I'm saying things that are appropriate, but you never know what people's past experiences are and what could offend a person. So I think also just listening to someone when they say, hey, those words hurt me or those words offended me, I think is really important. So maybe that's a way that you can learn from your mistakes.
Like, is this comment going to offend them? Is it necessary to say this? Or just let it go?
Yeah, that's always something to think, think before you say. I say that a lot with my students, think before you do, and then maybe we wouldn't be in this situation right now. So I think it's the same for adults and their social interactions, think before you say something, and maybe you'll make sure that you don't offend a person.
Be silent if your silence can save bonds. See, this one I find a little hard because I feel like it's telling you not to tell people something if it can hurt them, or if you can save their bond, then maybe you shouldn't say it. And yeah, that's probably true. It may not be my place to say things, but also I don't think I should lie to people. Like I don't think I should pretend that something didn't happen, or just to save a bond, like a friendship that they had, and then this friend did something bad, and should you tell them or not? You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I didn't really interpret it that way. So maybe if you know something, you shouldn't say it because it might break their bond.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. That, basically here's just a very basic example, but your friend's husband had an affair and
Right.
And you shouldn't tell them because it could wreck their marriage. Or you should tell them because she should know. I don't know. So I'm trying to read that a little and not sure exactly
what it's trying to say.
Yeah. What are you reading?
I was thinking, be silent if what you're going to say is going to hurt a friendship or hurt a relationship, just don't say it. And I was thinking of it more from my relationships. But I think you bring up a good point. I think it is important to be honest with people and to make sure that you're helping them and you're looking out for them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a tricky balance.
That's a tricky balance, right? You do want to tell the truth and make sure they know what's going on to a degree. Like, I don't know. It's a hard one. That's a hard one because you don't want to hurt bonds. You don't want to hurt your friend's marriage, or you don't want to ruin a relationship because of something that happened. And like you also said, you don't know what's going on. You don't know the full story.
No, you don't.
Right? So you've got all that going on too. So it's an interesting one. So this is a lot to think about.
It is a lot to think about. So working on being silent and also working on standing up for yourself when you need to, and understanding when is the right time to do it.
There you go.
Guests are giving their time, expanding our minds. Today's interview is in the category of physical wellness. We chat about a connection between oral health and overall health. Welcome, Cris Duval.
Thank you so much. It is great to be here.
Cris Duval is a registered dental hygienist, patient health advocate, and a wellness coach. She spent more than 4 decades in patient care. As a founder of the LifeGuard Approach, Cris focuses on helping dental and medical teams shift their mindset from repairing the damage to preparing patients for health. She describes herself as an architect of change in dentistry's approach to oral systemic health, and her ultimate goal is saving lives by both guarding and guiding health and wellness. And today's topic is why going to a dentist can save your life. So Cris, maybe you could start by telling us a bit about your background as a registered dental hygienist before you started working towards the LifeGuard approach.
Well, I was a traditionally trained hygienist. And what that means is in the past, I was always focused on tartar, or what we call calculus removal. And so everything I said and focused on was merely about trying to get the tartar off the patient's teeth in the amount of time that I was allotted to accomplish that task. And it was very much like playing an old game that used to be on TV. It was called Beat the Clock. And most of your listeners aren't probably old enough to know what that was about, but the contestants were given a task and they only had a limited amount of time to do it in. And so what I found was that as I continued on in hygiene for my first 28 years, I was constantly playing a game of beat the clock. In other words, I only had so much time allotted to see each patient. And I found that I was usually losing at that game because I was either running over or I just didn't have the time to spend to help my patients get well because I was focusing on repairing the damage. So I burned out, quit my job, but I had to go back to work, and I decided to go back to work for somebody that had a different approach to patient care, and I wanted to be a part of that. So that's where the change started in my hygiene career.
Yeah, and just before we get there, the reason I wanted to get you on the show is I've always heard that building up of tartar on your teeth can work its way into your blood system, and that the real connection here is to keep the plaque away so that you keep your blood system clean because you don't want to have hearts and strokes for that reason. I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about that connection, but then we're going way beyond that now. So when I started talking to you to set up the interview, I realized that's just scratching the surface. But tell me a little bit about that connection to begin with.
Well, it's recently, within the last 10 years, that we now know that the plaque, not the hard form of plaque, which is tartar, but the soft plaque, which is now called biofilm. Hopefully your listeners can hone in on that word. But the biofilm, we now know, in the majority of people's mouths is infected with some very dangerous pathogens or bad bacteria. These bad bacteria start the progression of gingivitis and gum disease. And if we don't figure out which pathogens are causing that, whenever your gums bleed from either your gingivitis or your periodontal disease, it inoculates those pathogens into your vascular system. And so the concern is they do in your vascular system exactly what they do in the mouth, and that is they create inflammation. And that inflammation changes the kind of smooth muscle cells that make up our arteries and our vascular system into cells that secrete some bad stuff that promotes atherosclerosis. So we want to avoid having any atherosclerosis in our vascular system. And we've got huge, 60,000 miles of large vessels and small microvessels in our bodies. So
wow, 60,000?
Really, yeah,
wow.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So knowing and being cared for by a dentist and hygienist that are up on this fairly new science. Unfortunately, it takes anywhere from 10 to 15 years for new science to work its way down into the clinical setting. And so particularly that's true also for hygienists. So we have to be aware of the changes that are happening. And then, in my opinion, we have to learn a new language of health and wellness, because we've never had anybody die of a tartar infection,
right.
The hard stuff, but it's what that is made up of that really causes us all the problems. And so they now know also that those pathogens, once they get in your vascular system and create your susceptibility to having a heart attack or stroke, they also migrate into other areas and joints of your body and also create inflammation. So inflammation is the key word that your listeners want to think about when they think about their health and wellness. Acute inflammation is good because it's going after something in your immune response is going after something in your body that is not supposed to be there. And so it creates this acute inflammation that recognizes what that not self product is and gets rid of it. But the challenge is if our immune system is challenged in several ways, it can become chronic inflammation. And that's what we're most concerned about. So acute inflammation is good for, infections in your finger when you cut it, and, maybe an ear infection in children. But it's when infection becomes chronic that becomes very, very damaging to our body.
I'm going to come back because you told me that there's different kinds of disease we can detect in the biofilm. But before we go there, if I take care of my teeth, if I brush and floss in that, is there something that I can do that reduces the possibility of this biofilm having disease in it, or is this just going to happen to us no matter what?
Well, no, there's a lot you can do. And it goes back to what you just said. If I brush and floss and all that, it's the all that stuff that really is critical, because we now know that brushing and flossing is not all you have to do to keep your mouth healthy. There's more. The best way to find out and keep yourself healthy, the additional thing you need to do is do a pathogen test to find out if you have those pathogens in your mouth and at what level. But a really great way to know if you have the impact of those bacteria in your mouth is whether or not you have bleeding.
So if my gums are bleeding, that's probably a sign that I have something going on in my biofilm in the tartar?
Absolutely.
And how
more in the biofilm.
How could I get that tested? Where could I go?
Well, you can get that test from your dentist, and hopefully more dentists are starting to do basically DNA testing of the bacteria in your mouth. And so request it of your dentist. If they don't do it, ask them if they'll get one for you so you can test. But a practice is behind the times if they're not doing some of this stuff now. When I would see a patient, what's typical for hygienists to ask is, do you brush and floss? Oh, great. How much and when? And I don't care about that information because I can tell almost immediately what somebody is doing. And it's not the only thing you have to do now to keep your mouth healthy. So the question I ask, because of the new information we have to learn how to speak the language of health and wellness. And it's not how we used to talk about it from the past. So a new question I ask almost right off the bat is, tell me about when your gums bleed, because that gives me so much more information than asking somebody if they brush and floss.
Give me an example. Like if someone said their gums bleed, I don't know, do they say in the morning or at night or after they eat? Like what might an answer be? And then what do you take from that?
Well, I take from that the probability is that they have a bacterial infection in their biofilm.
Oh,
so
I see.
I'm going to recommend we do some testing.
So if you don't ask like when they bleed, but if you're saying you're experiencing gum bleeding, that's a sign to you that they should get a test.
Exactly. And there's another test that people can do at home, which is very indicative of whether or not their gums bleed, because lots of people don't necessarily know. Well, they might, but I'm not sure. Is to do what's called the pink in the sink test. And what you do is you put toothpaste on your toothbrush, brush it around, but don't spit all the toothpaste out. Then you take a soft pick, those little picks that you use, push through your teeth. You push that through all your teeth, and then you wait about 10 seconds, and then you spit that leftover toothpaste into the sink. So if there's any pink in that sink, when you spit it out, that is your indication that your gums are bleeding.
What are some examples of pathogens that you find when you do that test and how they translate into disease?
Well, there's 5, and one of the most damaging one is called P. gingivalis, or we refer to it as PG. And it is very prominent in the bleeding that occurs, in bone loss around teeth. And we also know now that it's very significantly evaluated in Alzheimer's, because they do believe now that that pathogen crosses the blood-brain barrier. Man, anybody that wants to have a long health span, there's a big difference between lifespan and health span. Health span's that amount of time that you are healthier longer, is going to want to know, what bacteria do I have in my mouth that can be contributing to my general health and my overall health. These are also found in the joints of people that have rheumatoid arthritis. They're found almost always in tumors that are metastatic tumors from cancer in one part of the body that travels to another part. So, they're involved in preterm birth of babies. There's certain bacteria called FN that is present and can cause a mother to go into labor at an early stage. So there's tons of reasons to find out what your health is.
Okay, and just before I turn to the question we ask every guest, you do talk about the LifeGuard approach, and my question, a few questions. So what is it? And then how does that help patients and medical professionals connect?
Oh, well, just the fact that we connect dental and medical, because in the past, we've been in silos. And medicine and dentistry did not talk to one another. But now, because of the science that we know, we have to rely on medical providers to carry on where we leave off because we're not able to diagnose and treat, diseases of the other parts of the body, just in the head and neck. So that is extremely important. And the LifeGuard approach is focused on treating a patient in a way that prepares them for health tomorrow. So what dentistry and medicine have been doing up until now, or till very recently, is all we're doing is repairing the damage. And that's what I meant by a hygienist that just focuses on scraping tartar off your teeth. She's not really doing anything to send you out in a health frame where you are in a safety zone until you go back to see her for the next 3 months or 4 months, whatever. And the LifeGuard approach simply uses that preparing patients for health to manage patients' risks, because everybody that sits in our chairs has some form of risk. So we do life-saving screenings, multiple types of life-saving screenings at every visit. And the LifeGuard approach believes that that is what a hygiene visit is for, because we get to see a patient up to possibly 4 hours a year, and there is no one in healthcare that gets to spend that amount of time with someone. And so hopefully your hygienist is making use of that time and doing multiple life-saving screenings, taking your blood pressure, doing oral cancer screenings, doing airway screenings, sleep disordered screenings, biofilm health screenings. There's a product now called Carry Free that you can do a swab in the mouth and it tells you about the health of your biofilm. And it can tell you whether it's too acidic, and that lets you know whether or not it is invaded with certain bacteria as well. So there's lots that can and should be done now to help our patients.
Well,
and that's what the LifeGuard approach does.
It sounds really interesting. I mean, I thought there was this little connection. It turns out that, we're on the verge of all kinds of new ways of keeping us healthy and being proactive. So that's fantastic.
Yes, and you can imagine, the big discussions going on today are about gut health. And where do you think the bacteria come from that are responsible for causing gut disturbances and for creating gut health? They come right through the mouth.
As often happens, we burnt through our time and time flew. Our show is about wellness, and we explore 8 areas of wellness. And we ask every guest the same question in the context where we can't keep all those 8 areas going at any given time. And so we do like a mini wellness check-in. So Cris, today, are you currently neglecting an area of wellness in your life? And if so, can you think of even one thing you could do to foster wellness in that area?
I would say I am on target. I have taken a leadership role in my health and wellness. And the biggest thing that I think I can do to make it even better, my love language is giving. And I know how fabulous I feel when I have the opportunity to give to other people. And so when I give of my knowledge, my time, whatever, with people, it increases my brain health. And just even the mere thought of giving something to someone creates what's called a helper's high and a giver's glow. And so I think the best thing I can do to continue to be healthy is to expand my giving to others, because that makes me feel so good.
Well, I hope you feel good about talking to us tonight, because you've been giving a lot of information to us that's really interesting and helpful. So thanks very much for your time, Cris.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
This is info for new listeners. The points I'm about to make, you can find them in past episodes or in my book, Accidentally Well by John Webster, which I invite you to read. But at high level, just a quick explanation why we cover so many topics on this show, a wide spectrum. I had an epiphany about wellness and how to achieve it. There's 3 steps to it. First, identify my categories of wellness, my areas of wellness. Second, figure out real activities you can do to foster each area. And hey, start doing those activities. And third, develop a wellness check-in. The wide spectrum relates to step 1, my categories of wellness, my areas, because I have 8. Artistic, environmental, spiritual, physical, intellectual, economic, social, and mental. These are all areas that are important to me for my wellness. And that's why in some shows we're talking about physical wellness. Sometimes we talk about spiritual, sometimes social. We talk about mental. We talk about artistic. All these things are intertwined. So enjoy. It's me. Am I?
Yeah. Just let me say, flip side of the coin.
Hello, everybody. And we've got a special edition of Flipside today with Stephen and Elise.
Hey, Stephen.
Hey, so we've got a topic that is quite near and dear to me, and that is nostalgic video games. So I know from our conversations that we've had kind of totally different experiences with video games from the past.
Yes.
And so I wanted to start off by sharing some of my experiences, and then I wanted to toss it to you. So when I was growing up, we were a household that had Nintendo systems. So I grew up on Mario and Zelda and Donkey Kong. And I know there's a lot more than that, but those were our core experiences. And so I loved having the platforming plumber and the adventuring green, sprite. Those games, when I see them or think about them, they give me the warm and fuzzies.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, and there's more that I want to talk about, but I want to hear it from you first.
Of course. So in my household, we were a PlayStation family. So that was the system that my family had invested in. And honestly, I could get on it whenever my older brother wasn't using it. So it was whenever he was not using it, I would try to get on it. And games that I absolutely loved were Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon. And those games you have actually recently gotten through a PlayStation at our house. And I started playing them again, and it just made me feel so good. It just brought back so many great memories of me exploring playing the PlayStation when I could get on it, and how much fun it was to be able to finally get on it and not just watch my older brother play it.
Yeah. Speaking of that, there was something else that you told me before, in that when you played, you weren't allowed to save.
That's right. Yes, because, at that time, memory was very valuable. So I would play the beginning of these games so many times.
Yeah, so you're fantastic at the first 10 levels.
Oh, for sure.
And then getting past that, you're like, I don't think I've ever seen this.
I don't know what
before.
This looks like. This is amazing.
This is a brand new experience. So it was a brand new experience for both of us in that case.
Exactly.
And coming from my household, where I was the oldest of 7, it was very different because we had save files built into the cartridge, but each cartridge you typically only had 3 or 4. So that was limiting in a different way versus a memory card. And so I always had to make sure that I had the save file.
Yeah, of course, you're the oldest.
And if I clicked on that save file and I entered the game and I realized that there was progress there that I didn't do, I needed to figure out who it was, because there was hell to pay.
I'm sure. Yeah, you missed out on valuable playing time.
I missed out on an experience that I can't get back.
No, especially at that time with the way the games were created.
Yeah.
It's very different than now. So do you still play some of those games, and do they still give you the warm and fuzzies, or are you more interested in continuing to play new games?
That's a good point. As someone who video games a little bit more than casual, but not quite extreme, I just find that I've got too many games that I can't really go back to those old games, even though I still enjoy them. I realize that there are games that have had a lot of quality of life improvements.
Right.
And sometimes it's hard to go back where the camera doesn't always do what you want, or the control scheme isn't quite what it once was. And even though most of the games now can be played on new platforms, it's just that there's so many other experiences that I want to play. And I think that we're always chasing that feeling of nostalgia. in new
Of
games.
course. Yeah. And you can kind of find that when you discover new things and new games, and it just makes you feel that sense of awe again, like you did as a child.
And I think that's the hardest thing, is that it's hard to find those experiences that give that sense of awe as when you were a kid, when things were just a little bit more simple.
It's so true. And I know gaming is something you're so passionate about, and it's something that you've expressed an interest in me trying so that we could share that together. And I really appreciate you buying those games that give me that nostalgia, because then I think it gave me the confidence to try some new games that I've really enjoyed. So we're kind of exploring this hobby of video gaming separately and together.
And I hope that continues.
Please remember that we're not providing advice. We hope to inspire you to work towards balance, and we urge you to consult with qualified people if you need advice. The people on the show are speaking in their personal capacities. Their views expressed are their own, and don't represent the views or opinions of their outside contacts, their employers, or anyone else. We try to get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct, or that the things we talk about will work for you. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way.
And it's sign-off time. It's Sheila here with John.
Hello.
Just the two of us.
Just the two of us.
We have had a busy week. It actually started a little late for us because we had a long weekend and came back to town and went straight to work. But I did have a staff party at a new location. That was really fun. So that was a great time. And I also got to play cards. And I won in the very last hand.
Ooh,
yes. So
that's important.
that was a big deal. And then after working all week, we drove up about 2 hours to our daughter's place up in Owen Sound and stole our grandchild. This is the very first time that we've actually taken care of him by ourselves.
Okay, it wasn't actually kidnapping. There's no alerts or anything.
So we took him to our condo, which is about an hour away from Owen Sound, and we were babysitting him, and we had him for the whole night. And we are still alive, and he is still alive. So that was pretty successful.
It was actually pretty uneventful in the sense that he slept a lot. He just did everything
that we thought he would.
A perfect baby's supposed to do. They wake up, they eat, they burp, change their diaper, they stay up for a while and go, ooh, God, and then they go to sleep.
Yeah, it was great. Yes, and we both actually got sleep. So that was really nice. What about you, John? What do you have going on?
I really did enjoy another weekend up in our place in Collingwood. We don't get it very often because it's usually rented out. And after next weekend, it's gone again for a few months. So I have been enjoying that. But boy, it felt so busy because we went straight into the Friday night. We drove up. We did all kinds of drivings. And you in particular drove hours on end. Mm-hmm. And then did the stuff on the weekend. And then we were doing a few things up there to fix things up and odds and ends. And I felt like this morning was already kind of Wednesday, Thursday of a work week. And it was only Monday.
Yeah.
And then meanwhile, I also had to go to do kind of a comprehensive annual physical today. So lots going on there. And I got kind of a punch in the arm feeling right now because I got a vaccine for shingles because I do not want to get shingles. But apparently there can be side effects. So hopefully I don't feel too much tonight. Mm-hmm. But I'm tuckered out.
Yeah.
Might have to get some extra sleep.
Yes, it was a long day and it's only Monday.
It's only Monday. So maybe we have to go to bed early and get some sleep and try and keep this week going.
Yes, we can do this.
We can do it. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. And we hope to see you again next week.
That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.